Are we live?
It's loaded. You're live.
We're live. I hear we're live. Well, welcome if you're already here. My name is Jnanavaca. How many people have we got, Max?
32.
32 of you are here, so that's very good. That's great. And I've also got Claudio and Max who are doing, who are the tech team for this evening. And we've just been setting up. We've got a new sort of setup now, so I hope that the picture quality is going to be better. Hopefully it's better. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but anyway, the tech team have set up a whole new thing. Anyway, I hope you're well if you're watching this, and I hope loved ones are well and that you're doing okay. Yeah, I'm well. I've been up in my community most of the time, and for me, in a way, at the moment, life is fine. You know, lockdown is not a huge hardship. Actually, in the community, we've been, you know, just enjoying living together, and it's been lovely actually. So I've been fine. But yes, I keep hearing things about people who know people who are ill. And now I know some people who know some people who have died, and then of course India, and I haven't heard anything about Africa yet, but I know people in India who are helping with people who are hungry, feeding people, handing out food parcels and things. So that's a bit heartrending. Yeah, anyway, I'm well. You know, I've just had dinner upstairs, and I didn't stay for dessert, but if I wanted to, I could have had dessert. So it's all a bit heart-rending. It's this weird... I mean, I know that's always the case. It's always the case in a way, isn't it? There are people starving, but anyway, it does feel particularly poignant. So yes, I've been kind of trying to reflect on all that. Anyway, I'll maybe say some more about that, but for now, I just want to say welcome if you're arriving. Welcome to the London Buddhist Centre. Welcome to Dharma Night. My name is Jnanavaca, and particularly welcome if you're from, not from London, if you're from, well actually welcome to all of you, but one of the real benefits of this online teaching has been that people can join us from all over the world, and that's been really lovely to, I don't know, just to know. Is there anybody from abroad or even further afield?
From Trieste, North Italy.
Hello. Who's that from?
Well, they don't have a name. It's Trieste.
Okay, well, hello from whoever you are from Trieste in North Italy. Who else have we got?
We've got Nina from New York.
Nina from New York. Yeah. Nina, lovely to... if you were on the winter retreat, Nina, which I presume you were, just lovely to have you join us. Yeah, I hope you're well, Nina. Who else have we got?
We've also got Francesca from Rome.
Francesca from Rome, welcome from Rome. So that's 2 from Italy. That's 2. That's very good. Oh, I think it's 7 o'clock. Are we going to start? Let's start. So I'll formally start now anyway, and then hopefully more people will join us. So my name's Jnanavaca, and I just want to say a very warm welcome to all of you. For Dharma Night. So yes, as you know, we've been doing these online teachings since the lockdown, and tonight I want to talk a little bit more about, in a way, the start of the Dharma life, how we sort of start practicing, at least in one way of looking at it. I want to talk about Shraddha. I want to talk about faith, but first of all, I think I'd like us to sort of settle, make sure that you're comfortable, make sure that you've got a cup of tea or whatever it is to make you sort of settle and be comfortable. We'll, in a moment, in about 5 minutes, do some meditation. And in particular, I'd like us to, I'll lead us in a sort of body scan, and then see if we can just connect with metta. One of the positive things of this extraordinary time, I think, is that more people, all people all over the world, not just people in our Sangha are connecting naturally with kindness, with love, with empathy. I know not everybody is all the time. I'm not all the time. But it's somehow more, it feels more easy to do that. I hope that's your experience too. It feels more easy to do that. Actually, I think it's got a little bit harder. For me, when we first went into lockdown, I just felt this extraordinarily opening up of my heart. There was just this sense of the Dharma being the most important thing, of us all being united as a nation, but in fact as a world. And this sense that I felt intensely alive because I didn't know what was happening, because there was just this uncertainty, which there always is in life. Subhuti was emphasizing this yesterday. There's always uncertainty in life. But for a while, it felt like I, and probably many of us, were just opened up. It gets a bit harder as the lockdown becomes more normalized. Unless, of course, something very difficult happens. If somebody falls ill that you love and know, or if you fall ill, then again you're thrust into this uncertainty. And in that crisis, as it were, there is a real opportunity for connection, for love. I was talking to, on Zoom, talking to, as it were, Vidyadhaka, who lives in the community below the community I live in. So he lives in Sukhavati community. And we were having a chapter meeting last night. And he has been ill, probably with the virus. That's what, he had some symptoms. Fortunately, he's fine now. And he didn't get it very badly. It was quite mild. But for 2 or 3 days, it was, he was pretty wiped out. And he was saying last night that he found it really, really moving, being ill. He found his heart just opened, being ill, and he was watching his mind, and he knew that he didn't know whether the illness would develop or how it would develop. He knew that there was danger, but rather than feel fear and anxiety, what he said it felt like was that he felt connected. He felt connected with people all over the world, everybody who's suffering, and everybody who's potentially suffering. Were united in this, and he felt that connection. He felt it viscerally, he said, and metta was the natural response. I think that was, I asked him whether I could talk about it. I was so moved just hearing him, because as Dharma practitioners, that's what I aspire to. I haven't been ill yet. I have been ill in the past, but I haven't yet caught the virus. I hope, I don't know, not just with this virus, but I hope that I can respond with love when I am sick and vulnerable and dying. That's what, as Dharma practitioners, we're sort of aspiring to. In a sense, we're preparing for our death. And it's so easy to go the other way, isn't it? To shrink into fear. I know that, I've done that myself. Or to shrink into wanting to sort of protect oneself from further pain, to shrink into anxiety. But if we can, in that vulnerability of being ill, in the vulnerability of being uncertain, if we can, there's a real potential to open up to love, to metta, to connection, because it connects us with what's true for all beings, not just human beings. We're all embodied beings, are subject to birth and then sickness and death, and it strips away our differences. That's at least how I'd like to think that I might respond. So if you're unwell now, or if you're in a state of anxiety, I hope the meditation helps you. If you're fine and physically fine at least, I hope the meditation allows you to feel a sense of connection, and that potentially one day we will be ill. And I hope it doesn't happen to you, but the human body is subject to this, to old age, to illness, to death. That was why the Buddha went on his quest for the deathless. So I think ultimately the response that we're looking for is enlightened wisdom and compassion, enlightened wisdom and enlightened Maitri or Metta, Maha Maitri. But ordinary Metta at our level is a step in that direction, is a step in the direction of wisdom. So let's settle down in our meditation postures, or on a sofa or chair. Just make sure you're comfortable, and I'll lead us in a period of meditation where we'll settle into our body, and then we'll be opening the heart. And I'm just going to ask Max to dim the lights here. Good. So perhaps beginning with a couple of deeper breaths. Arriving into your body. The more we can bring awareness down into the body, the more the body can soften. And the less we'll be preoccupied with thought or stories. So as we breathe out, particularly on the out breath, it's almost like you're breathing out a sigh of relief. See if you can have a sense of letting go of tension in the body, letting go of the weight of the body. Letting go of the preoccupations in your mind with each out breath. And feeling the weight of your body against the chair or whatever support you're sitting on, and against the ground. Whatever contact there is with the chair or support or ground, imagining and feeling your weight dropping down through those points of contact. Deep into the ground. As if we're sending out roots into the earth, like a great tree is rooted to the ground. And at the same time, see if your upper body can be upright, and the spine rising up in its natural curves, holding the upper body, lifting it. You could imagine a golden thread lifting you from the crown of your head very slightly. Towards the sky. and softening your face. Having a sense of your brow smoothing. And your eyes becoming soft. All the muscles around the eyes and mouth and jaw can release. And softening the shoulders. Seeing if you can let go in the shoulders a little bit more. And softening in the legs, the muscles in the thighs, in the calves. And as the body softens, allowing, if you can, the heart to also soften. Perhaps bringing to mind something that you've seen or read that moves you. Perhaps an act of kindness or generosity, or self-sacrifice in some way that has moved you. And you bring it to mind not so that you can get caught in stories, but to stimulate a softening of the heart, an opening of the heart. Tenderness and sensitivity towards yourself and others. And also look for a sense of spaciousness in your experience. As the heart softens and opens, there's a greater openness and spaciousness of mind and body. So gently bringing people to mind. All over the world. Most of the people in this world at the moment have had their lives changed drastically by this pandemic. Some of them have had it turned around, turned upside down. So see if we can just wish people well. The well and the sick. Those caring for the sick. People who are hungry. Even starving. As well as those bringing aid. People in all sorts of states of mind. Those that are anxious and fearful. Those that are bereaved and grief-stricken. Those that are well and happy. Just having a sense of your metta radiating out across the world. As well as a sense of each other. Over 100 of us watching this together, meditating together, sending metta out into the world together. May all beings be well. And then coming back to yourself, to your body and your physical experience. To your breath. And when you feel ready, opening your eyes and coming out of the meditation. Good. So welcome if you've joined us since I welcomed you last. 2 weeks ago at Dharma night, Subhadramati and Tuslasara, I believe Tuslasara was doing the bulk of the teaching, she was talking about the wheel of life, and particularly focusing on the 6 realms that beings can be born into and inhabit, but also move through from sort of moment to moment. I'm not going to sort of recap on what she said, but it's available on our YouTube channel to have a look at. What I want to start looking at tonight is moving off the wheel and onto the spiral path, onto the path of the Dharma, onto the path that leads from where we are now, wherever we are now, to growth, towards enlightenment and to enlightenment itself, to liberation, to the bliss of liberation, to the deathless, to something that transcends not just life, but life and death and the whole cycle of samsara that's represented by the wheel, to something beyond all conceptual grasping. Anyway, so I want to start talking about the spiral path, and what sort of allows us to take the first step off the wheel and onto the spiral. So that first step is perhaps the most crucial step, and the way that it's talked about, at least in this teaching of the wheel and the spiral, is that we move from dukkha, which is unsatisfactoriness or suffering, to shraddha. The independence upon dukkha, faith arises, shraddha arises. Independence upon unsatisfactoriness, suffering or pain, faith arises. It's sort of to do with a different response to our own experience. So earlier on, I was talking about Vidyadhaka being ill, and he said that he found that he felt very moved during that time. He felt connected with the world around him, people around him, and there was both love and beauty in his experience while he was ill. That's a response of shraddha. That's a response of shraddha to suffering. So he was suffering, and yet his heart opened with faith, and faith that in a way reached out in love to others, to connection with others. Our normal response to shraddha, if we're not, to dukkha, sorry, if we're not sort of mindful, if we're not practicing, our instinctive response to pain, to unsatisfactoriness, to sickness, to anxiety, mental pain, physical pain, is to shrink from it. That's very, very normal. That's what I instinctively do. None of us want to feel pain, not under normal circumstances. We have a sort of reflex to avoid pain, push it away, or to distract ourselves from it if it's unavoidable. If we can't push it away, we want to forget about it. And that response of push and pull keeps us on the round of the wheel of life. It keeps us in samsara. And that push and pull can take lots of different forms. It can be an unconscious reaching after pleasure when I'm in pain. So I'm feeling lonely. I'm not feeling lonely at the moment. I don't have much chance to be lonely, actually, because I'm living with 9 other men, and we're in the house pretty much all the time. But some of you may be feeling lonely. Actually, it is possible, isn't it, to be lonely in company as well. So some of you may be feeling lonely. I know in the past, when I have felt lonely, it's so tempting to just, distract myself online on the internet, or read the BBC News website for the 4th time that day. Nothing sort of really has changed, but I scan that, or I put on some music and scan the BBC News website or read a book at the same time, not really doing either, and reach for some chocolate while I'm doing all of those things, in an effort to distract myself from this sort of dukkha, this unsatisfactory inner feeling. Very, very normal kind of thing to do. The thing is that it doesn't work, and I kind of know that it doesn't work, and it's still an instinct to distract myself. Hopefully I'm not alone. Well, hopefully I am, but probably I'm not alone, and you know what I'm talking about. And that's one way of living that avoids really dealing with the dukkha of life, the unsatisfactoriness in life, that we just distract ourselves. I think for a lot of people, what this lockdown has meant is that they can't distract themselves in the ways that they're used to distracting themselves. And then suddenly we're faced with, how do we feel? How do we really feel? And that can be very, very challenging. That can be very challenging. The other response, apart from sort of distracting ourselves towards pleasure, the other response is to sort of lash out in irritation or anger or blame, to sort of not really sit with our own pain and just blame others, as if anger will somehow feel better than loneliness or dukkha or whatever pain we're in. And that doesn't work either, does it? And in a way it just leads to more pain. I did get very angry last week, and it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. It just causes more pain. The Buddha said, didn't he, that getting angry at somebody is like picking up a hot coal and you burn yourself. Never mind hurting somebody else. So those responses to dukkha keep us on the wheel. What happens is that we keep going through those different realms on the wheel of life. We stay in samsara, we stay small, we stay living through our habits. In fact, our habits tend to strengthen, and before we know it, life tightens. We become fixed in a small world. The spiral path begins with the same sense of dukkha, or reflection on dukkha, but it begins when we have a sense that there must be another way. There must be something more that I can be, something more that I can live for, something more that I can experience. There must be more to life than my habitual reaching for chocolate or putting on the BBC News or whatever it is. There must be something more. That instinct that there's something more meaningful in life is the beginnings of faith in Buddhism. Shraddha, I'm going to just use the word Shraddha in Buddhism because faith doesn't necessarily have the right connotations, although perhaps it's the best English word that we've got. But Shraddha begins with a response of more. In a way, it's heightened or accentuated when that inner intuition, which is a sort of dissatisfaction in its own right, that we want something more, when that inner sort of urge meets some indication of something more. It might be something beautiful that you see. It might be an image. It might be a Buddhist image. It might be an image from any kind of tradition. It might be in nature. It might be an act of kindness. It gives you some sort of sense that there's more. But for a Buddhist, it's sort of embodied in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, this sense that there are ideals that are worth living for. Initially, it might just be, picking up a Dharma book. So that was how it was for me. When I was in my teens, I picked up some books. I read some books on Zen. I read some Hermann Hesse books. I read some popular Zen books. I read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which I didn't really understand at all. But it gave me a sense that there might be something more. For some people I've met, it's like they see an image of the Buddha and or a bodhisattva figure, or they meet a Buddhist, or they meet somebody who embodies for them a higher way of living, an ideal. And that, I think, starts us on the path. Now, for many of us, if you're watching this, you may have had that in the past, and now you're practicing meditation and you're learning about the Dharma more. One of the dangers of Dharma practice is that we can lose that initial, spark of enthusiasm, that spark of wonder even, that there is a path, that there is a path out of our small, habitual, confined lives. And for me, what I find is that I have to keep sort of re-inspiring myself. I have to keep reminding myself that, oh yes, I did have many years where I didn't have the Dharma and life was cramped. And now I have got this path and I need to actually keep on it somehow. So for me, I need to read Dharma regularly. I try and have some sort of Dharmic reflection going in my mind all the time. Not all the time, I mean every day. And often that's through reading or listening to some Dharma talks or talking with friends about the Dharma. Now meditation's another thing. I need to meditate every day in order to stay in touch with my inspiration. I also need devotion in my life. Faith goes hand in hand with devotion, which is an emotional expression of our faith. So if you've not done this yet, try having a shrine at home. Try setting up a shrine at home. I have in my room, a large portion of the room at least is taken up by my shrine. And often I just enjoy looking at that shrine. I light the candles and I'll sit looking at it. That sense of reverence, devotion, helps me stay in touch with my ideals. It helps me stay in touch with Shraddha. So I want to say a few more specific things about Shraddha, and then I'm going to see if there are any questions about this movement from unsatisfactoriness, from dukkha to Shraddha, or from about Shraddha itself. So I'll give you a few moments to think of some questions. But in Buddhism, what I want to say is that Shraddha isn't blind faith. It is this emotional, intuitive response, but it's also clear thinking. It's a clear mind. Shraddha is, as it develops, it uses our reasoning faculty. It uses our rational faculty. It sort of requires that, because otherwise our emotions, our intuitions can really lead us astray. I don't know, fanatical practitioners in all sorts of traditions have strong emotional responses, but I think some of their fanatical actions wouldn't stand up to reason. So I think reason is really, really important in Buddhism. So when you read the Dharma or hear the Dharma, reflect on, does it hang together? Does it make reasonable sense? Is it internally self-consistent? Does it have an air of truth about it, the ring of truth about it? So I think our rational faculty, in fact, needs to be developed very often. And Buddhism helps us do that. Meditation helps us do that. For example, clearing the mind, having a clearer mind helps the reasoning faculty. So faith is based on this intuitive, emotional kind of response. But then that can develop and be supported and strengthened by reason. And somehow the two can go together. So when I read Dharma these days, so I might be reading something conceptual and my heart opens. So the intuition, the emotion and the reason, they support each other. They're in a sort of reciprocal positive relationship. But even that's not enough, because it's possible to read about the Dharma, to be intellectually clear about what the Buddha taught, what Buddhism teaches, and still remain, in a way, trapped in your head, in one's head. I was like that for years, probably from the age of about 13 to probably the age when I first sort of started reading about Buddhism, to the age of about 27, 28, when I started actually practicing Buddhism. So that's 14 years, which is quite a long time to be sort of... I used to talk about Buddhism to my friends and bore them at parties. And there was a good friend that I was in a house share with called Tim. I don't know if you'll be watching this, Tim. I doubt it. But anyway, hello if you are. Tim Budden, lovely man, very, very good friend of mine when we were students together. And he was studying philosophy and physics. And I can remember saying to him, you know, Western philosophy, just ditch it. Ditch it. Buddhism's where it's at. You need to practice Buddhism because then you can realize the truth for yourself. He was either too kind or not quick enough to point out that I wasn't practicing Buddhism. I didn't know what I was talking about. It was just mouth Zen, as they call it. I spent a good part of my youth, my younger life, learning sort of about the Dharma and not practicing it at all. At all. Yes, so maybe if you ask me later, I might tell you some stories about how I wasn't practicing the Dharma while calling myself a Buddhist. So what we need is actual practice. We need practice. And particularly that practice has to be about our ethical actions. Unless we're starting to practice the precepts, I don't think in a way we can say that we're on the path. Generosity, kindness, friendliness, unless that's starting to permeate our lives and our actions, we're not going to make any progress. It's the foundation. And then meditation, of course, meditation without some sort of meditation, it's going to be very, very difficult to work on our minds, to clarify our minds, to open the heart. And then wisdom arises on top of that. But what I mainly, in terms of faith, what I want to say is that it's through practice that you gain a deeper Shraddha, because then what you have is experience. You start to have in your own life, in your own lived experience, that the Dharma works. And it's that then really convinces. I found that on my first retreat. I can remember it wasn't really until my first retreat that I felt that the Dharma worked for me. Until then, I built up some degree of Shraddha, but I sort of felt that it wasn't for me. I mean, that it wouldn't work for me, that somehow I was inadequate to the Dharma. But it would work for other people if they were really committed, if they had given up everything and become monks or nuns, then it would work. And I wasn't prepared to do that, so it wouldn't work for me. On my first retreat, it started to work for me. And I can remember just the elation. All I did was get into a little bit of a dhyanic state in meditation. I didn't even know what it was, but I asked somebody and I said, what is this sort of tingling, enjoyable sensation? Is that right, or am I doing it wrong? And he said, Ratnagosha it was, he said, oh no, it's right. He pointed me to a book on meditation. I read the book and it said that was the beginnings of dhyana. And I was just elated, so elated that it started to happen more, because I was so happy that it started to happen more. And on that first retreat, it was a 10-day retreat, and I thought I was just a few years away from enlightenment, because now I'd experienced, now it was real. Buddhism was real for me. So do you see that strengthening of Shraddha, it goes all the way from an initial intuitive response through an intellectual understanding and reasoning, through to actual practice and experience, actual experience arising. And that journey, which is actually not just linear, because then experience opens the heart more and you have more of a devotional response, and then you have this hunger to clarify and learn what the Dharma says, and then that leads to more experience, etc. So it's a virtuous circle. That has to be repeated over and over again. I mean, that is part of what going for refuge consists in, going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha consists in. It's very easy to lose touch with, particularly if we're in a state of pain or suffering for something. So let me just pause there and see if there are any questions. I believe there are a couple of questions, 2 or 3 questions. So Claudia is going to read out the question.
Yeah, so Holly and Tracy,
Hello, Holly and Tracy.
they've said how Shraddha is sometimes interpreted as confidence,
Yeah,
and whether you could say something about that.
yeah. It's sometimes translated, thanks Holly and Tracy, it's sometimes translated as confidence trust. It's like sometimes it's a deep sort of conviction that the Dharma is true, and also a conviction that I can practice. That is has the sense of confidence to it. It has that sense of knowing what way's up, what direction I should be going in. What is it that I'm trying to do with my life? All of that gives confidence. Sometimes we, lots of self-help stuff talks about how we develop self-confidence, particularly if we're lacking in it. All of which might be helpful, but I think that real confidence comes not from ourselves, but from basing our conviction, our confidence, our faith, our shraddha on the truth, on something that transcends self, on something that transcends this samsaric world. So confidence is a good translation. Sometimes I don't think it's an adequate translation, in that it can not encompass a whole devotional response of gratitude and reverence and a sense that we're living in a sacred world where everything is alive and pointing beyond itself to some deeper reality or higher reality, where the Buddhas are all around us. Confidence sometimes feels, it's a good word, but it sometimes feels too secular a word. Whereas faith has the opposite danger, as it were, where faith can easily connote blind faith. So in a sense, I don't think that there's one word in English that is adequate. Shraddha is multifaceted and has to sort of be discovered. But I hope that goes some way to at least touching on your question. Shall we have another one?
Yeah, great. Nico asked a very good question.
Oh, hello, Nico. How are you doing? Well, you can't say. I hope you're doing well. You must be well enough to ask the question anyway.
Yeah. It's actually a question that's quite actually relevant to, I think, people, for us in 21st century in London. He asked, if suffering isn't acute, if it's low level, for me it doesn't always give enough of a kick or a shove towards faith. How can we move from unsatisfactoriness, not suffering in a grand way, towards faith?
So I don't know if everybody heard that. Can you all hear Claudio when he asked this question? They can hear him. Okay, so if suffering isn't very acute, if it's low level, which in a way I hope it is, then very often it doesn't necessarily lead to shraddha. We can probably distract ourselves from it in the ways that I was talking about. So I think it, for me anyway, what works, there must be other ways, is I need to reflect. I need to reflect that, okay, I'm sort of all right in my flat in London with my friends above the Buddhist Centre, and it's a beautiful sunny day outside in London, and I'm not ill. It's sort of easy to forget by not reflecting. It's easy to forget both what the human situation is, i.e. that I could be ill tomorrow, I could die tonight, let alone tomorrow. It's easy to forget that, but perhaps what's easier, perhaps as a stepping stone, is to just think about other people, and our connection with other people. I find that very, very helpful. Sometimes I reflect on people who are suffering in the world. Sometimes I just reflect on what I've been given in this life. I've been given so much. I feel when I pause to reflect, I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful to all my teachers, for example. My Dharma teachers, Bhante Sangharashita being foremost, Subhuti, who ordained me, but lots of other Dharma teachers. I've got lots of teachers who are also friends, but also teachers that I had at school and at university. They gave me a lot. My parents, they gave me a lot. I try and reflect on gratitude, and what that does is it sort of opens the heart, and then I'm close to Shraddha. Then I can really sort of feel this sense of expansiveness that wants to share, wants to give what I've been given, and then that sort of takes me into Shraddha. So I think reflection is really important. It can be a reflection on dukkha, but it could be reflection on positive things that I've been given. It could be beauty, just pause to take in the beauty of the world, and see if that opens the heart, see if that moves you. Sometimes it moves us, but we don't sort of do anything about it, but sometimes it moves us and it has an intimation that there's more. That I'm not really living my potential yet. There's more to the mind. Meditation puts us in touch with Shraddha. It can be hard to remember or want to meditate, particularly if everything's going fine. But it's essential. Yeah. Connect with another person. Give, generously. Do something, and that connects us with a sense of more. Yeah. Perhaps I'll leave it there. There's more I could say on that. There's loads more actually to talk about there. But let's see if there's one more question, one or two more questions. Maybe one more, and let's see how we're doing for time.
Yeah. So both Owen and Annette.
Owen and Annette. Hello, Owen and Annette.
They, sort of closely related to what you're saying, actually.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about friendship, spiritual friendship in particular, and community in the role of Shraddha.
Yes, yeah. I think we need other people. I mean, in a way, even if they're not friends yet, I think we need other people who are practicing in order to galvanize, motivate, sustain our own sense of practice. It's very, very difficult to do on one's own. It is possible to do on one's own, but you have to be pretty exceptional to sort of do it entirely on one's own. I think, I need anyway, other people. I get a lot of Shraddha from reflecting on or seeing other people practice. Even just sometimes seeing them, even sometimes just bringing them to mind. When I was on my long solitary a couple of years ago, I did a 6-month solitary. I would bring people to mind a lot. I felt actually very connected with my friends and teachers. And just reflecting on them brought me into contact with Shraddha. I mean, it would stimulate Shraddha, it would stimulate gratitude, even reverence. But yes, if you can, then sort of go deeper into the Sangha. One of the things that we're trying to do with these online teachings is overcome the fact that we can't physically meet with means to at least meet on a mental level, on the level of consciousness. So, tonight, I don't know, there's 135 of us watching now, I think, and or more, and there we are. We can't see each other, but we're connected. We're very connected on a mental level. Feel that connection. I believe there's a magic to that connection. I don't mean to be it's not all mumbo jumbo, but I have experience of consciousness transcending, the physical. I believe that we affect each other. We are able to affect each other, I believe. So see if we can connect on that level. And yes, I think friendship, community is it's such a boon if you can have a friend or friends who are practicing with you, if you can feel part of a Sangha. It's such a boon. I think that it's not always easy or quick to feel part of the Sangha. So when I talk about spiritual friendship, I don't always mean like it'll be instant, and I don't always mean that it'll be comfortable. It might not be like a mate. It means a fellow practitioner who you can support and who supports you, or it means somebody that you can learn from. Sangha, it might be more like an intimate friend, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. But important, I think, important for remembering to stay on the path. We're so influenced by each other. We're so influenced by what other people do around us, the groups that we belong to. We just take that as normal. I can remember when I first started meditating, at that time most of my social life involved going down the pub with friends and colleagues, and I just thought that was completely fine and normal, and it was. And I started meditating, and there was a tension between drinking and meditating the next day, and clouding my mind in the evening, trying to clear it in the morning. The tension happened. When I stopped drinking, then that caused tension in the group. I didn't feel so much part of that group, etc., etc. I really needed people around me who were practicing as well, who I could say, look, I don't want to drink tonight, or yep, I want to talk about the Dharma with, I want to meditate with, etc. Yeah, so very, very important. Maybe one more, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So, this one's from Phoebe.
Over there, Phoebe.
And she asks, how do you deal with feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude and complexity of the Dharma and the path ahead?
Right, yeah. The magnitude and the complexity of the path ahead and the Dharma. And in a way, the Dharma doesn't have to be complex. I know that it can be like that because it's vast. I mean, there's so much written about it, and it's developed so much over the hundreds of years, thousands of years. But in a sense, the Dharma isn't complex. In a sense, when we're in touch with metta, when we're in touch with mindfulness, when we're clear, that's it really. We're on the path. But what I have learned to sort of come back to is I sort of don't mind the fact that the Dharma is so vast and that there's so much to learn and, in a way, so much to do. I don't mind that there's lifetimes of Dharma practice ahead of me. In fact, I quite like that now. I used to get a bit anxious about it and think, I can never do this. I'll never be enlightened. And now I kind of think, I don't know how long it will take, but I don't mind, because practicing the Dharma brings its own rewards. My life is immeasurably richer than it was before I practiced the Dharma. And I've got a huge long way to go before I am anything like enlightened. It doesn't matter. Practice is its own, it becomes its own reward, it becomes its own fulfillment and satisfaction. At least it will if you keep at it. It's not always like that, I know, and sometimes it's hard going. But it can do, if you keep at it, it becomes its own reward. I sort of remind myself that it's okay to be unenlightened, it's okay to be imperfect. I've got lots and lots of flaws. Fortunately, none of my friends are on camera to tell you about my flaws, and I'm not going to start because it's getting too late. And that's okay. For me, it's fine, as long as I'm trying to practice. that's very fulfilling. What it means, why it's fulfilling, is that it gives meaning to my life. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I lacked when I was younger and didn't have the Dharma. I was reasonably fortunate and had a good life. It just lacked any purpose. It lacked any meaning. Practicing the Dharma has given meaning to my life. How far I get, it doesn't seem to matter so much. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, Phoebe, but that's how I sort of approach my Dharma practice. Look, I'm sorry that I haven't answered all your questions. We've not had time to get to more of your questions. But I'm really glad that we could spend this hour together. And I hope that you'll keep tuning in, to all of our Livestream Dharma teaching. I'm going to finish in a moment with, we'll recite the Transference of Merit and Self-Surrender in call and response. So we'll finish in a ritual way, but it just remains for me to say, if you can give to the centre, at the moment, if you can give money, that's what we most need. And it would be really, really appreciated. Even if you can only give a little bit, I think it'll help you, well, it'll help us, but it'll help at the centre, but it'll help you feel you're contributing to the Dharma, to the spreading of the Dharma. All the money that we're getting as income, it doesn't go towards paying teachers or people at the centre who are employed. Minimise their expenses. They're on support, so they just get what they need to live on, plus some expenses. And all of our teaching is done on a voluntary basis. So our cost base is relatively low. In fact, it's very low. And the money is used to spread the Dharma. So if you can give, that would be very, very appreciated. If you can give monthly, that would be even better. There'll be a link in the under this and in the comments for that. If you can give, that'd be great. Thank you. So let's settle down and finish in a ritual way. Perhaps we can have the lights low again. The transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained.
May the merit gained.
In my acting thus.
In my acting thus.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
My personality throughout my existences.
My personality throughout my existences.
My possessions.
My possessions.
And my merit in all three ways.
And my merit in all three ways.
I give up without regard to myself.
I give up without regard to myself.
For the benefit of all beings.
For the benefit of all beings.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Just as the earth and other elements.
Are serviceable in many ways.
Are serviceable in many ways.
To the infinite number of beings.
To the infinite number of beings.
Inhabiting limitless space.
Inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become.
So may I become.
That which maintains all beings.
That which maintains all beings.
Situated throughout space.
Situated throughout space.
So long as all have not attained.
So long as all have not attained.
To peace.
To peace.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay well.